So the movie's good. The movie is good, but now, how good is it? How good is the movie? It's a 7 out of 10, but I wanted it to be like an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. And obviously this is subjective, right? Maybe you enjoy it more, maybe you enjoy it less. I have heard like, both cases. I'll start with what's the best about the movie. The best about the movie is the Backrooms. It's so like such a such a nightmare scenario. Like if you thought about like falling in there yourself, like I thought that when I was watching the movie. Like you fall in this place, you are absolutely fucked. Also, another good aspect about the movie, the acting, right? Like this guy and also like the psychologist, just very very good roles. Like just very well acted, right? These like these two guys that like this guy and this girl that like recording shit, they also did a very good job. They're not that many roles in the movie, but those are the best ones. Cinematography was nice, the music was nice. Nothing too nothing too memorable, honestly. The part that for me it's a little bit less, it's the most disappointing part. It's the writing. You spent like, I don't know, like it felt like half an hour just establishing these characters, right? Like especially like the protagonist and the co-protagonist, like the psychologist, and it just takes so long. I've heard that criticism, that the pace is low, but for me it's not that the pace is low because there's no stuff happening. Like if I have heard people like saying like, oh, like we just take too long, like seeing this guy walking through the back rooms slowly and whatnot. No, I'm fine with that. My problem is there's so much stuff that feels a little bit like filler. Oh, by the way, obviously, very obviously, spoiler alert. Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm gonna be talking about stuff that happens in the movie. Do not watch the video, right? Go watch the movie, and then maybe come back to the video. That's what I would recommend. If you don't care, then okay, you don't care. But yeah, spoiler alert. We spent so much time establishing this dude and his trauma. We spent so much time establishing the woman and her trauma, and it really doesn't matter. It truly does not. If you look at like we're here it's a horror movie, we're here to get scared. So they try to do something like with the themes, right, to make it like mirror the Backrooms themselves, which is a nice touch, but not something that you need for the Backrooms. It's a horror movie. It's not a poetic movie. The original concept of the Backrooms is, would it be creepy to be in this place, right? It's not about like, oh, but what about like your internal change? Again, it's a nice thing that you can like like salt and pepper on top of the thing, but it shouldn't be that much of a focus. And I feel that like like the writer really tried to bring it home with, again, like the developing of the character, especially the guy, but also like with the girls. We literally like have to like go in flashbacks several times to her past, right? And I just feel like there isn't enough of a reason to do that. Like there isn't a big payoff that is like, oh my god, not really. Like, yes, the climax, like the climax of the story and even the end of the story has to do with it, but it's not strong enough of a reason for you to like do that. There is not like the payoff for all that like psychological, thematic, poetic stuff. It's not strong enough, right? So I feel like it was like the kill your darlings part of writing that people give you that advice about. Like like you might care a lot about it, but like the audience, it's not really that relevant for the audience. I know another thing is that like they're not that likable as characters. right? And in horror, I think that like you benefit a lot from like you being able to like really empathize with the characters, right, and really like them, right, and to some extent like you can empathize. I personally think that the story will have been way better with different protagonists. Like if you look at other horror movies, then you see that like for example like a lot of slashers, they use teenage like or like protagonists or people in their 20s. Why? Because you can just like use stereotypes, right? Like this is the quarterback, this is the cheerleader, this is the nerdy guy, etc. And that what that allows you is just shortcut a lot of stuff. Like you don't have to develop these characters as much because like you with your first impression of them you can have you can get a lot. And then like if you like take the characters in a different direction, it's just like a twist, and like oh, I can judge this person like too fast. But when you take like and when you and like it's not like there's no horror where there are like adults that are protagonists, sure, but in those cases you also see that those characters are parents, or they are like they are there to fight the monster. For example, like in The Conjuring, right, you got the adults, they're parents, or they are the Warrens, which are they fight the ghost and the demons and whatnot. You see The Exorcist, same deal. So you can have the adults there, but I think that they have to be grounded by either be like monster fighters, or even better yet by having either children or at least another adult that they care about, right? Like they don't need the children, right, but they need to care about someone in the story, like a partner, a sibling, or a friend, something, right? If you look at like Jurassic Park, the guy, like it's not like a super horror story, but it's a horrific scenario if you actually think about it, right? And there are horror elements there. You got this guy, he doesn't even have children, he doesn't even like them, but now he's in the middle of this nightmare with these children, right, that he has to protect. That makes us care a little bit more, in the case of this of this guy, he doesn't care about anybody, right? Like he doesn't love anybody, right? He's angry about with his ex-wife. He cares about proving a point to his psychologist, and like the two guys that like the guy and the girl that worked for him, he doesn't really care about them, right? This woman, she doesn't care about anybody either, right? Like maybe a little bit about like his client, about the guy, but like it's out of like preoccupation, like like with her patient, and maybe just like like morbid curiosity, right? But other than that, like she doesn't really care about him nor anybody else. Like she doesn't have friends either. Like there's a scene in which they they show her like talking to someone, and she couldn't like care less about this person. The problem with that is that like now you lower the horror, because the horror of I have to survive this, it's a good one, but what's even better? I have to survive this, and also like these people with me. What's scarier than like being in a fucking zombie apocalypse? Being in a zombie apocalypse with a baby, right? It just makes it better. So I think that will have made it way better, and that will have like just put more vulnerable people in there, right? And also I think this is me. I think that we care more about a character the more other characters care about them, right? If it's not like an absolute necessity, right? You can have a character that you really like but nobody else likes, like Boji, right? If you've seen that one, at the beginning, at least it seems nobody cares about him, we still really like him. It's not absolutely necessary, but it works, right? if they're, like, it adds to it. So I think that this movie lacked that, like it lacked the human element. The characters felt a little bit like, just pretentious furniture. It's like, ooh, like trauma, ooh, inner conflict, ooh, themes. But at the end of the day, like, I couldn't care about them at all. If they were not in the Backrooms, I wouldn't want to watch a show about them at all, right? And I think that, like, the horror is at its strongest when you could have like a story about, like, oh, we're just gonna follow these guys, right? And it's like, I don't know, like, these teenagers, and they have their romances and their drama and their high school and their prom and whatnot, and they are funny, they got conflicts, and you would like to just see them even without the horror. But then the horror kicks in, and now it's like, oh shit, right? With these people, I will hate to see a movie, I will hate to watch a movie about them without the Backrooms. Does that make any sense? So that's my problem. This guy, he is, I hope he's not seeing this, right? Probably not. But, like, he's the weakest of the casting, honestly. But I think that it's also because, like, his roles, like, his scenes are the weakest. If like, he has like 3 scenes, I think, right? And he, one is like just that, like, he's just sitting there, just staring at the screen and being like, and that's it, not even dialogue, right? Another one, he's at his home and he's eating like popcorn with his family, and then he sees again something on the TV and he's like, and then at the end he finally gets to speak. Right? Like, it's very, like, he cannot say that much and whatnot, and then, like, when he starts to say, like, the most interesting shit, like, the other character just, like, starts to, like, have, like, that effect in which, like, you're not listening to the other person anymore, so, like, the sound of their voice just get muffled, right? So my mind got done dirty with his scenes. The luckiest guy in the movie is actually the electrician. If you've seen the movie, he just got there, 1 scene, no, 2 scenes, right? Like, if you count when he comes in, 2 scenes, got out, see you, deal with your horror yourselves. And for example, like, honestly, like, I found these two, like, these 2 guys way more way more interesting, way more entertaining, way more relatable. Right? Like, this is just a dude, right? This is just a girl. This guy is fucking crazy. Right? From the get-go, right? It's a little bit, like, he's a little bit crazy. But then, it's full on crazy. Right? So I wish that we had, like, I think that the Backrooms will have worked better as a story in which, like, it's a group of friends or a group of people that know each other, right? And it's now like we fell into the Backrooms all together, right? Or got in, whatever, like, even if you walk, like, into a wall or whatever. We are now here. How do we survive this alien ass environment, right? I think that will have been way stronger than, this guy finds a door, then he, like, he gets to all the people to go, with him, with a camera, and then he disappears, so his psychologist goes after him. And also, like, the role of this actress, as as good as she did, require her to be, like, super unemotional, and just have, like, this face most of the fucking time. Maybe you could have a story in which, like, they feel like they fall down, or they found the place, they go down, but, like, then they come back out, but they keep going back, but at least it's like a group of people that, I don't know, you do like, that are friends or whatever, right? At some point, like, the guy found a chair that is, like, golden, and it's, like, copying a chair that he has, like, up in his store. And I think it will have been cool. I thought that they were gonna go with like, oh, like what if the gold, the chair is actually made of gold here, and it's like now the guy has like, it's like, oh, like I can just like cut, like this shit off the floor, bring it out there, sell it, and now I got a bunch of gold, and like all my problems are solved or whatever. And now they got now they got like an extra reason to go down there, other than like just curiosity, but like, oh shit, like we can find like some loot here, like some cool shit to sell. Another thing that like didn't make any sense about the characters for me was that they have to go through a wall. The moment I can go through a wall, I will never trust any surface in this place, because I'm not supposed to go through walls. So if I can go through walls, maybe I can go through the floor, maybe I can go, you know what I mean? So like I will have to like go with a stick touching in front of me to make sure that the floor is just not gonna like fucking make me fall. But these people, they never consider that shit, right? To be fair, I don't think that people in the YouTube videos consider that shit either, but I was thinking that, like, right after the guy passed through, I was like, now you're just gonna like step around, like the laws of physics didn't just break, right? And by the way, just because like your hand can go in and like comes out, well into it or whatever, like doesn't mean that it's not bad. Like who knows? Maybe you're getting like crazy fucking radiation. So the best sections of the movies are the ones that are filled with the hand cam, right? At least for like the first half of the movie. Then the end obviously is the best, But this one, like this section, is actually literally the strongest. The horror later doesn't even compare, right? And I love this about the Backrooms, which is that like when I was watching it, I was like thinking my way back to the door, right? To the entrance. I was like, okay, we're over here, I will have to go like this and then like that and then like that. But then when the guy just starts running and shit, you're like, yeah, we never seen that door again. We're never gonna see that door again. So like again, the setting of the Backrooms is so strong, it's so cool, but a little bit wasted on the characters that we had, honestly. I like the thing that like like the Backrooms, or first encounter with it is like literally from a furniture store, right? And it's basically, if you look at the Backrooms, it basically looks like like an IKEA, just a bunch of empty rooms and whatnot. So that's a good knock. I understand why this shit was like Captain, like he was a pirate, but also he was like in the Ottoman Empire. There's even a character that asks us that, but like, yeah, honestly, why? All right, and I don't know if there's like like extra theme on top of that shit that you gotta think about it or something. I don't know. The motherfucking climax of the story. It's she goes down there, he's been down there, we don't know exactly for how long, and turns out bro is absolutely crazy. He kidnaps her. They explain everything, right? They explain how the Backrooms works. Not that we really needed much of an explanation. Like I already had like the same idea of what it was doing. I'm a fan of the YouTube videos, right? So like I know basically what it's doing. Although I have to say, in this story, it does not care about the canon, or the lore of the Backrooms. Not even the one from the YouTube videos, right? Like it's doing its own thing, and in some aspects it's an improvement, but in some other ones it's a little bit I kind of like it more like in other stuff. And before I continue with the climax, just so you understand like how unrelatable this guy is, he becomes a crazy villain, and then he's like, oh, like these are the monsters, right? Like he kidnaps her and then she's surrounded, right? Like there's monsters around. That is the weakest part of the horror. Like it's the worst thing you can possibly do with a horror movie. Show the monsters just daylight, and even worse, just chilling, just doing absolutely nothing, right? And in you know, like in the context of the lore that this movie uses, it makes sense, right? The explanation is like these people are just copies, you know, the same way that the Backrooms like make copies of places, but every copy, you know, like every copy is, you know, worse and worse and worse, sort of like, you know, like making a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. The same shit happens with people. It copies people, and then like these people, they just look fucked up, they behave fucked up, right? Like they got several eyes, they got several noses, they don't feel pain, you know. And then even worse, bro, is like, oh, and the best part, you can eat them. And then like he just cuts a part of the guy, you know, one of the monsters, and he puts it on a plate, and it sort of looked like it's cake. Right, it's either like cake or plastic, but you wouldn't be able to eat if it was plastic. So I'm thinking it's cake, maybe not sweet cake, but it's cake. These people are cake. So like, you're telling me the monsters are cake? And it looks soft as fuck too. Like the cake looks super soft. So that will mean that most of the monsters that you will encounter, you know, in these Backrooms are not even hostile. They are just like stupid robots that don't care about anything, and they're just like doing nothing or doing very little. And then again, just so you know like how unnecessary and stupid like the whole drama of the guy is. He, you know, like in the climax of the story, or you could maybe say that it's like just right before the climax, depending on how you know want to see it, but I do think that's the climax, or at least the beginning of the climax. Instead of being about horror, it's about like, oh, let's do that scene with my wife again, and let me tell you what the problem with you psychologically is. Is that what you want out of a horror movie? A therapy session as the climax? No. Then comes the, you know, like the copy of the guy that is kind of a pirate and shit, and starts following the, you know, this girl. And I was thinking, isn't he made of cake? Isn't he literally made of cake? Just fucking cut him. Just fucking hit him with anything, it's gonna fall off. Bro, it's cake. Also, another thing, you know, even before that, you know, with the scene of the guy, you know, having living there before, you know, like for who knows how long, you know, days, weeks, maybe months. The fact that your protagonist can live in the Backrooms, it just makes the Backroom way less scary. You know, I do like the idea. I always had the idea of like, it would be cool like if there were like some survivors in the Backrooms, right? Like that you're super lost here, and all of a sudden you find people and they're like, yeah, we just live here, we got stuck here and we found a good place and we're here. Yeah, but it's not even like that with the case of this guy. It's just that he was like, he encountered like a monster. We left him like he was gonna die, but turns out apparently that monster wasn't really bad, and he just somehow just made it all throughout. Because when we found him, we don't even know in which level of the Backrooms we are. We are nowhere near the fucking door. You know, we don't know. So this guy like had to walk a bunch, and he never died. So the fact that somebody can live there and there's not like a good reason for why this person is surviving here makes the Backrooms less scary. I also thought this is not about the story, but I also thought that like, don't these cameras look too fucking ugly? Like too, like, I know that like they're like from the 90s or whatever, like don't they look like way too bad? If you're a fan from other material outside of the movie, right, the videos and, you know, maybe video games, or maybe just watching videos about the lore of the Backrooms, then it feels, the monsters here feel like a downgrade from the monsters in those other ones. Like the sort of entities that you can find in the Backrooms, it's, you know, like there's so much more variety, right? I think that these ones are like a good addition, especially if you make them all hostile. I think that they will make for a great addition, actually. But the fact that you have a bunch of them that literally behave like furniture, diminishes the fear, of the place. And what else? Like there are some good omissions from other lore, like for example, like the importance of almond water, right? The Backrooms doesn't give a fuck about you. Why will it be like trying to give you some water that or like I think that like maybe like you couldn't eat something from the Backrooms without drinking almond water. I think it's fine that like you can eat something in the Backrooms, because like the Backrooms is already like such a hostile environment. Like that, like at least let me eat something that I find. It's not like you find a bunch of food, right? And then the ending that you get is that the girl finds get found by the by the company, by the mysterious company that we see in the YouTube videos. The problem is that that is a Deus Ex Machina, right? And to be fair, it's the only way, because when she started running and shit, right, I was like, girl, there's no way you're gonna find the motherfucking door. You don't even know where the fuck you are. You are cooked. So it actually makes sense that the only way that she was ever gonna survive this shit was actually getting help by these people, and it had been like hinted at that they were there, right? Like we already knew, right? So it's all right. But I do have to say, and it's especially good because like now we get to go with them and see a little bit of their facility, and and even talk to one of the people. But the problem is, like, I imagine if this was my first encounter with the Backrooms, like I'm just I've never seen any other stuff. I just walk into this horror movie, let's watch it. Will that be a satisfying ending? That just like all of a sudden from nowhere, just Deus Ex Machina? I don't know. And it also like takes a little bit away of like the good, like one of the cool aspects about the Backrooms, which is that like if you think about like what if I was ever here, you think about like, okay, how will I try to survive? Right? And one of the ways is like, okay, like like marking my way so that I can like just get out of this maze, go back to the door, that type of stuff. But if you just get rescued, then you didn't have to be smart, you didn't have to think anything, you just got lucky. Those are pretty much all the reasons why the story was, again, like it's a 7 of a 10 story. It was a good story, maybe a little bit, maybe the story was more towards the 6, honestly, right? And the movie, like the movie with the the strong concept, the good performances, and all this type of stuff, just like like elevated it. I don't regret watching the movie whatsoever. In fact, I'm looking forward to more of it, right? Just hopefully improved. Now I gotta talk about like some more meta stuff, right? Like outside of the story and the like the movie itself. Something that you gotta take into account is that like this shit was made by Kane Parsons, right? This guy is the original creator of the YouTube videos, right? They are like super well made, and I got like super viral. And he started when he was like a fucking teenager, right? And the Backrooms was like announced by that it was gonna become a movie when he was like 17, I think, right? Then it started filming when he was 19, and it released now that he's 20. If this guy was like my son or some shit, I'll be proud as fuck. As much as I can say like, oh, it's a 7, it's actually a fucking amazing achievement. Now that said, I think that he is responsible for the best things about the movie and not responsible for the worst things about the movie. Because if you look at the movie's IMDb, or also like on Wikipedia, I also like researched like in some other place, you will see that he is not the only writer of the story. Like it says here that it was written by Will Sudik, right? I think I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but that's how I'm reading it. Over here it says that it's written by Will Sudik and Kane Parsons, But it also, like, I did a little bit of research and I found that, like, originally the person that was writing the script was Robert Patino. Now, about, you know, Kane Parsons as a writer. Okay, if you've seen his other stuff on YouTube, right, you will see that this is like his previous work. You will see that he just got better over time. You know, like, you got a 4.6, 5, 5, 7, 7.5, 8, you know, 7.7, 8.3, 8.2, and then you got back down to a 7.1. And if you look at, like, you know, like this previous material, as I said, you are gonna see that the writing, you know, like, there's barely any writing. Like, there's barely scenes in which people are actually talking, or, like, you know, characters interacting. It's mostly just, you know, one, you know, like, walking around the backrooms, right? And so I don't think that he comes in with, like, a very strong, you know, he's a director. I don't think that, you know, I don't think that his passion is on writing. So I you know, maybe I'm wrong, right? But, like, I don't think so. I don't know to which extent he made additions. Shit, maybe, you know, his additions were the things that actually make the story better than, you know, it will have been otherwise. Now, if we look at the original writer, right, Robert Patino, we'll see, like, what are his previous works. Now, if you look at the IMDb of Robert Patino, right, his works as writer are for Prime Suspect, never heard of it. Cod Bank, never heard of it. Sons of Anarchy, have heard of it, never watched it. You know, like, 17 episodes. Bastard Executioner, never heard of it. Westworld, 3 episodes. Apparently in the first season, I'm assuming. I do have to say, like, the first episodes of Westworld were pretty good. Right. After that, it kind of went downhill, honestly, and I stopped watching, I think, on season 2, the beginning of season 2. Then you got DM Set, never heard of it, and, you know, has a 5.5. And then Zero Day, never heard of it, miniseries, right? And upcoming, he has Monopoly, which I don't know if it's about, you know, Monopoly the game or not. And then you got Assassin's Creed, which I have no hope of an Assassin's Creed movie being good. You know, the previous one was kind of ass. So I don't think that Robert Patino is that good of a writer. But even if he was gonna be amazing in this one, the fact that you started with one writer and then it switched up to someone else, that's just obviously gonna fuck up the story, because now you're not seeing the vision of one person, you're seeing the vision of one person, and then another stranger came in and started tweaking it. Like, so who knows? Maybe the original version of Robert Patino was way better. Maybe Will Sudik actually made it way better. Maybe he made it worse. Maybe Will Sudik will have had a way better story, will have thought of a way better story all by himself, but now he had to carry, like elements from the previous story. Or maybe Kane Parsons, added things or took things out that actually make the story worse or better. We don't know. We will never know. But I think that it's not a very good sign if you have a bunch of writers, or like, especially if you switch writers. If you have a bunch of writers, you can have a bunch of writers, but they work all together, and they can have like a cohesive vision for the story. But whenever a writer gets out of the project and a second one comes in, it's sort of like when a director, sort of like when The Hobbit was going to be directed by Guillermo del Toro, and then he got out, and then and then Peter Jackson had to come in, and he just had to do whatever he could to try to salvage the thing. That's why The Hobbit is not as good as Lord of the Rings. I generally think that if if Peter Jackson has started The Hobbit from the beginning all by himself, or with the people that he did Lord of the Rings with, I think it will have been a way better product. And even if it was just Guillermo del Toro all by himself, I still think it will have been a better product. So I think the same thing happens with writers. So let's see, the previous stuff from Will Sudik. We got Homeland, right? I watched the first season of Homeland. It was pretty good. After that, I just couldn't care. Borgia, never seen it. Ash versus Evil Dead. This is horror comedy. So not exactly the best example of doing horror. And then you got Westworld, again, only one episode, and then you got the Backrooms. So yeah, so you'll understand that after seeing those IMDb credits for writing, I'm not gonna think that it's like oh, it's just me, like I'm the one that thinks that like they're not great writers. I don't think that they are great writers, and that sounds mean. I hope they're not watching this video, right? But that was the weakest part for me. I think that it could have been way better with a different set of characters, different location. And then you also got producing the man, the legend, debatably, the fucking goat of horror, at least when it comes to movies, James Wan, right? He was producer for this one, and honestly, I'm not surprised, because bro low-key has been participant of most of the top horror movies of the last 2 decades. Like if you look at this, you got like stuff that he did, like himself. Like you got Saw, you got Insidious, you got The Conjuring, you got Annabelle, demonic Furious 7, right? Like he doesn't only do horror, right? Insidious again, Conjuring, Lights Out, Annabelle Creation, Jigsaw, Insidious Last Key, The Nun. He did Aquaman, which I thought was like a very odd pairing, but like he did a good job. The Curse of La Llorona, Annabelle Comes Home, Mortal Kombat. He did Spiral from the Book of Saw, Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, Malignant, There's Someone Inside Your House, Megan, Insidious, The Nun 2, Saw 10. You got fucking Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, the sequel. Shameless Lot, The Monkey, Megan 2.0, The Country, Last Rites, Mortal Kombat 2, and The Backrooms. You got Insidious Out Further, Revenge of La Llorona, etc. I don't know to which extent he was involved, in the production of this movie, because, being a producer is one of these titles that is a little bit vague, but he's obviously a good sign. It's obviously a good thing to have in a board. Not to be mean to Kane Parsons, but I think that Backrooms movie directed by James Wan would have been so much better. So I would love to see this idea, but now like fully done by him will be cool as fuck. Now, coming back to Kane, I think that here's the thing. Because he had the writer of Robert Patino, because he had the writing of Will Sudik, it's not fully his vision. So what I'm thinking is, and this is just guesswork, but I'm thinking that like he was just making his horror videos from YouTube and whatnot, and then he got approached, right? Maybe he was the one that initiated the thing, maybe. But I see it very likely that they actually approached him, already with a script, and he was like, "Oh shit, I get to actually make a movie." Even if he doesn't like the concept, like the story, the script fully, he's just gonna say yes. He's just gonna say yes because he's gonna get his, like his foot on the door. Now he's a director. You know what I mean? And a very successful one. Right now, the top two movies, in cinemas are, like Disney Obsession. I don't know in which order, right? On top of, The Mandalorian and Grogu. So, like, and making a bunch of money on like a $10 million budget. By the way, like the $10 million budget, you really cannot tell for most stuff. It just looks great. The only place where the budget can be felt is when you have like the scene with the monsters and like the dying, like on the table, and shit just looks like prosthetics. Like I wish that they have used a little bit more CGI there, honestly, because it just looked like it looked fake as fuck, right? Anyway, that was a tangent. What I was saying is that, like, he got his foot in the door. He's now a director, an economically successful one at that. So now, hopefully, this is my hope. Now he can do one that he writes himself. Or he can even write with someone else, but like at least it's like his idea for the story. Or he has like at least like a strong say on what goes on the story. And I think that probably is gonna be way better, right? Because this guy is obviously a fan of the Backrooms. Arguably nobody's a bigger fan of the Backrooms that Kane Parsons. So I think so based on that, I just think that he will be able to write a better story for a Backrooms movie than these other two guys that honestly, like, they might also be fans of the Backrooms, or they could just be like, oh, there's this very successful thing on the internet. If I make a movie about this, it's very likely to sell and very likely to be successful, because writers gotta write, writers gotta eat, and sometimes they're not writing like the stuff that is like their passion, right? So maybe they just did it because it was like, oh, if we make a Backrooms movie. So I hope that he has said that he's not done with the Backrooms, right? But maybe he will also do other stuff, and I understand if he wants to like diversify, but I really hope that he comes back with a movie, another Backrooms movie. I will even call it the Backrooms, right? The Backrooms, not even like Backrooms 2, just a different Backrooms, and it's now his thing, his story, and his lore. And just, you already proved that this concept sells. You already proved that you can direct, just now with your vision for the story. And I think that will be way better. So yeah, that's my review of the movie. I liked it, but there were aspects about it that were disappointed. I will still recommend for you to watch it. I'm a fan of the original creator. I'm a fan of the concept, but this movie just didn't scratch average. All that said, it's still like way better than nothing. When I say better than nothing, sounds like fucked up, right? But I mean, like, if in the case of like never getting anything out of it other than the YouTube videos, right? And or getting it, and it's fully by random people in Hollywood that don't really care about the story. At least we got Kane Parsons behind the camera, right? So just because of that, like, the Backrooms and the filming of it was fucking flawless. So I'm looking forward to one in which he is the writer and it's his lore, because I also felt that this movie did very little towards expanding the lore. And it's not like I want the movie to, you know, tell me everything, explain everything. I think the horror thrives in mystery, you know. The least I know, the better. But a little bit, just a little bit of something, even if it's just like more information, that it's sort of more mystery. Like I didn't feel that this added any more mystery to it, right? The only thing that I feel that you know got a little bit expanded, and I don't even know if it's an expansion of it's just something that I like I forgot about it, but is the fact that like the company used to be like an MRI machine making company. I don't know if I've seen that before in, you know, in one of the videos, you know, or if it's a new addition, but that is literally the only new lore that we get out of it. So very little in the way of adding stuff to it. So I will really like to see the story, but now, you know, it's his story and not, you know, the story that someone else wrote. You know, he's the director of Obsession, which I haven't seen yet, but I plan on seeing and also reviewing. Yeah, and that is my review of the Backrooms. I hope you liked it.